Dr. Mundo, the Madman of Zon. The good doctor is a big man. His charge is large, and he employs groundbreaking, never-before-seen techniques. He breaks beyond the limited constraints of modern-day medical doctrine, and isn't afraid to get in there with his bone saw. Oh, also he's not actually a doctor, at least not medically, or even in any sense of the word, really. All that matters is he thinks he is one. You know the saying, believe in yourself. So he believes in himself, and so he is. Don't ask me his legal name. I don't know it, and I'm certain he doesn't know it either. Like all great writers, doctors, and rappers, he goes by a pseudonym. Call him Dr. Mundo. In the life he left behind long ago, he was the muscle working under some big-time chem baron. He was a big, lovable fella, throwing out nicknames like confetti and being an all-around chummy buddy. Formalities weren't something that in the good doctor's pre-doctoring days he was particularly good at, and so he made a habit of, on occasion, rubbing people the wrong way. Turned out one day he rubbed left when he should have rubbed right against upper management, specifically his boss. That big chem boss saw fit to toss the pre-doctor doctor in the Oswald Asylum, a facility with a reputation for being the most asylumiest of asylums in the worst way possible. The boss wanted this to be a message to the rest of the minions. Keep rubbing the right way or you won't be rubbing at all. Mr. Mundo was bundled up with care and tossed into a padded room, and that's where the human experimentation began. Mundo had some absolutely fantastic caregivers at the Oswald, if you count being jabbed with endless medical-esque juices and the tasteful whittling of chunks off the brain as excellent caregiving. These atrocious treatments went on for a good long while there, better part of a year, I'd say. At the Oswald Asylum, they're a science comes first kind of place, and since you cannot technically define Mundo as a science, remember, he's a doctor, his health came second. After pumping him with ungodly amounts of serums and the like, Mundo began to change. He was a big boy already, but he was bulking up with some intense muscle mass. Unfortunately, he then forgot all about his past life of felonious enforcery, but it cleared his mind up for more important things, like noticing that beautiful white straitjacket he was wrapped up in. Looked an awful lot like a doctor's get-up. The gears in his head started turning. He was no longer just a lowly, no-name civilian, but an esteemed medical practitioner. By the gods, that was the only thing that made sense. That's why he was here in this terrible asylum. He was but a humble doctor, and everyone else around him were patients in dire need of treatment. The chem baron, what put Mundo in that asylum, decided to show up, figuring that he'd probably have learned his lesson on rubbing by now. He dinged on that front lobby bell and waited for someone to show up. And no one did. He could hear some poor soul off babbling down a ways, but other than that, it appeared that everyone all at once had taken a collective lunch break. Big Boss followed that jabbering noise. Maybe he could track down a manager and complain about the terrible service. And as he creaked open the door that housed those ominous groans, he realized, wait a minute, these people aren't on lunch, or at least any lunch he had ever seen. What he saw was a bunch of body parts thrown around like rice at a wedding, littered all over the floor, and the culprit was standing there, menacingly. It was a big, purple, man-shaped purple monster. What's worse was its blue tongue just dangled there. It had escaped the creature's mouth, and it didn't want to go back in. Purple Fellow was also dressed in a far too small straitjacket and held onto a bone saw. Then it hit the boss man. This was the enforcer he so lovingly dropped off at the asylum. He then peed his pants. Dr. Mundo didn't recognize that wayward chem baron as his old employer, but as another patient that needed some life-saving intervention. The patient, obviously not in his right mind, no doubt delirious with fever, blasted the doctor with a hidden pistol. It was a juicy meat shot, but it didn't bother Mundo much, the bullet hole quickly regenerating over itself. And as a testament to the doctor's temperament, he didn't take it personally. He needed to help that poor man in any way he could. Dr. Mundo had learned by seeing and then doing. So what he had seen Ben doing was that he was to strap down the patient, then immediately operate, as there was not even the smallest fraction of time to spare. The Chem Baron peed himself again. This was how you say, not good. The good doctor operated. A labor of love. He put all his skills to use. He toiled and toiled, his bone saw making as precise of cuts as he could muster. But in the end, it was no use. Another failure. Everyone always thinks about how the mangled, dismembered pieces of a once person felt, never how the big purple doctor feels. And he felt sad, but found solace in the fact that he gave it his everything. Then he remembered, Zahn is just chock full of more of these patients, and by playing a strictly numbers game, he had to get it right at some point. That lifted his spirits back up, and so Dr. Mundo galumphed his way on out of there to get hold of some more Zahnite sickies.